Not my will, but your will, Adonai. Work in me and through me. Let me ever be a channel of blessings. Let my coming in and going out be in accordance with what you would have me do. So be it. Amen. O living creator, Adonai. O living creator, Adonai. We are yours. We wear the helmet of salvation and hope. We carry the shield of faith and your word. We hold the sword of the Spirit. We buckle the belt of truth around our waist. We put on the breastplate of love and light, and we walk with boots of readiness and peace. We are yours. Amen.
Amen. More radiant than the sun, purer than snow, finer than the ether itself. The spirit in my heart, this self I am. I am this self.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Shalom, shalom, brothers.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, Moray, Prophet. What's good, man?
I mean, everything is all good.
All right, good.
It's all good.
Much love to everyone out there.
Much love and
to
light.
y'all.
Cain.
Much love and light. So we got a pretty good topic this week. Had some really good opportunities to research in on this one, and I'm curious to see what you brothers got too. So we're just gonna continue on with the 7 spheres of influence, but specifically we're gonna hit on the topic about religion today.
Yeah. Again, I think we really touched on that a couple of weeks ago when we was talking about religion and the family. So it just
Right.
came back up again because we're doing the 7 spheres or mountains. That what you say?
Gotcha.
Based on this podcast, it's probably going to keep coming up. Religion and spirituality. So
Yeah.
All good. Which
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
that's the intent anyway. So let me ask y'all, why this might be a redundant question, but for anybody that's probably just tuning in, why you think they call religion a sphere of influence?
I mean, whether you call it religion or a cultural collective belief in some supreme source outside, when you go back, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, you go back, most cultures, their whole society revolves around some type of belief in a superior being
Right.
or beings.
Okay.
So in the United States, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, when it was established as a Christian country.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's Protestant, Catholicism, whatever the case may be, it was established by the European powers as a Christian country.
Right. And not saying that the indigenous people here didn't have a spiritual connection or what they would say their religion
Right.
in their hands. And like you say, it goes around the world when you're talking about Islam, Buddhism, and what's the other one? The India.
Hinduism.
Hinduism.
Okay.
And there's other various religions or spirituality things around the nation that, some people don't even know about.
Right.
So, but it's always influenced because of the culture or what demographic of people is using them. Because you might can look at, let's say here in the U.S. It's a lot of them. You have Christianity, you have Muslim, you have 5%ers. They may not say it as a religion or what have you or spiritual, but it's basically all brought down to a spirituality thing. I mean, you can name a whole bunch of them here in the United States.
Okay. Would you wrap up like? Well, I'll hold that thought for later.
No, go ahead. Don't.
I would say in that. Say your question again.
Well, my question was, why do you think religion is termed as a sphere of influence?
Okay. So, adding to that, it's like we're using the term religion, but it's just a belief system.
Right.
And in the belief system, it usually has some type of moral foundation or moral structure. And it's not many nations that we could look at historically that wasn't built on certain moral principle, governments, laws, statutes, judgment, court system. All of it is it falls on principle of government and law, which are other spheres of influences. But this is what drives the motivation to even build a nation.
Right.
Yeah.
Coffee?
Got a little coffee in you?
Just a little bit. But yeah. So like to a point that you made earlier, Zach. Now I could be, this is all subjective because I've seen like several different dates, but I'll start with like, maybe pre-1500 era. The majority of people who, that were not Eurocentric in their beliefs, right? They had some type of Eastern religious identity that they, would shape their practices. Right. And it ranged from, there were several names to it from what I understand, but it wasn't the coin-based Christianity that was indicatively tied to the Eurocentric viewpoint.
Right.
You mean at the time when they came over here?
Yeah, I mean, like Zach was saying earlier that primarily, like, the idea of, and correct me if I'm wrong in what you said, but like, just in the West, that idea of religion is tied to Christianity.
Okay.
When people speak of religion, right, they tie their minds to Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, the big three.
The big three.
When it comes to Abrahamic religions and faith.
Right. But what I was saying was, I was like, there may be differences of opinion, like on a starting date, but like if I say like pre-1500, if you want to, use that as a starting point, the majority of people who were not Eurocentric in their belief system, they had some type of Eastern practice.
Okay.
And then, this is going to segue into like, us talking about, the African American.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Finish your thought.
This is going to segue into us talking about the African American and how his religious system has morphed, transformed, and became several things.
And that's going to be a very interesting dynamic because my research led me, thanks to Zocane giving me the video, going back to
the Hebrews,
the Hebraic roots, which is it's just as, I guess the word is convoluted, as it is as you move backwards,
right,
with different spiritual systems that slaves came over here with, that were in Africa with, and then that even goes back to Europe, and then goes back to the East.
Dig in on it.
So in the research, well, I've taught a lot of it before about the, I was a culture study teacher for our assembly. So when you get into it, it's really, you have to unlearn or put aside your understanding of how you see history when it comes to so-called African Americans. And a lot of people try to use the slave trade as the beginning.
Right.
But it goes back further. When you start looking at the settlements of like West Africa, people think that the people that were brought here in slavery were just Africans and African religious systems, African spirituality. That's what they call it. But if you dig deeper, a lot of what is, I guess, hidden in some of these spiritual systems are a lot of Hebraic thought. Of course, you're going to have Islam. And then when you go back further, you'll find that some of those people who are in the millions now, some of their ancestry actually goes to Portugal, Spain, other parts of Europe. But then it goes all the way back to Jerusalem. And then it goes all the way back to what we call more of the Levant or Iraq in certain regions. So it's not really as simple as people think it is to say, oh, the African American religious system or spiritual system, because we took on a lot of beliefs of where we were taken or where we moved to or where we traveled to, and we fit in. But at the same time, we still carried, I don't know if you want to say through the DNA, of course, we would probably say that, or through the spirit or the soul, a lot of our customs, traditions, ideologies,
maybe even language,
what they call patois or slang in other terms, because that's pretty much what they're trying to call it with a fancy patois. It's really, when you look at the language, it goes back to the simple Hebraic thought. You know what I mean? I'm just grabbing a random word that caught me when I was doing studies in the earlier Hebrew days. You talk about a witch or Ob in Hebrew.
Yeah.
In the Caribbean, we call it Obia. They practice Obia. So, and when you start getting into the studies of the Hebrew language, you're going to start seeing a lot of Africa or what we call Africa in it. But I want everybody to understand this. In ancient thought, what was called Africa was like the northern part of Africa, right across from Italy, to Tunis, Tunisia, Carthage. That was Africa. So what was the rest of the continent to the European, Italian, and so on and so forth?
So you talking about like honing in on one small little snippet.
That was Africa.
That was Africa.
A lot of people knew it as the continent, depending on who you are, depending on what time, Ethiops. And that's a Roman Greek term. Right. Ethiopia.
Right.
Blackface. So yeah, it's when we first talked about this topic, I was like, it's a lot.
It's all good.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I think we'll probably have another show where we kind of dig into some historicity.
Right.
Yeah.
But
you're gonna try to make me do work, huh?
Yeah. Just a little bit.
But I think we're all gonna do it.
Right. Okay.
But you know what I'm saying?
For this particular topic, right? I wanna discuss. I would like for us to discuss, the sphere of influence in religion to the African American.
Okay.
So-called African American.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you this question. What would you call a quote unquote black religion?
A black religion.
Yeah. I mean, and I ask because,
solely.
I mean, sure.
That no one else is doing.
Well, I won't say that no one else is doing because,
or something that is directly from black people or people of color.
Well, let me not use the term black.
Yeah,
because
thank you.
Because I think that
that's bothering me.
But I feel you. But
right.
The majority, a significant amount of people use the term black.
Right.
They relate to the term black, and if they don't relate to the term black, they relate to the term African American.
Okay.
Right. So for the purposes of our conversation, those are the two terms I'm a stick with. But we know that we don't ascribe to those terms.
Right.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So, and for our listeners, it's just for the sake of the conversation.
Okay.
Not because we believe that that's correct,
Okay.
but we ascribe to that.
Okay. It's it's a hard question to answer. So we're talking about African American. It's kind of hard because it's almost like, I just say, what's in the beginning shall be again in the end. And I'm not by any way, shape, or form saying this is the end, but and anybody could fact check on this. Most places on the planet, the indigenous people of that region were people of color. They had some type of melanin, whatever the case may be.
Right.
So as you get into what we consider spirituality and spiritual systems, I don't think that there's any system that wasn't, I don't want to say originally, but there weren't people of color involved in it or in the foundation or establishment of it until some certain point where you have splits and, what we consider racism or race is fairly new.
All right.
You know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
So fast forward in several thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, and we have this thing called the African dispersion or diaspora, and then you have people being brought to the United States of America, stripped of their culture, stripped of their cultural identity and belief systems, but at the same time, those same belief system was hidden away or actually taught by those elders that were still alive into, to the slaves.
Right.
So in some way, shape, or form, it carries on. And even when we say a European or Western religion, when you comparatively look at what we consider a black church, or peace to my brothers in the Nation of Islam, or even what were they called? The Moorish Science Temple. Right. Peace to those brothers. When you start looking at these things, they start expressing a different dimension. It's a different dimension of expression. So if I want to call these the black church, even though I think the best way to say is the church, but the church is expressed in different ways.
In different ways.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because even though we're all human beings, based on, ideologies, things that are taught to us, things that some could say could be inherent. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. That these things move through families. It keeps getting passed on from generation to generation, just from observing. It's expressed in certain ways. So,
no, go ahead.
So, if you want to call it the black church, has its expression. Islam has its expression, and if you want to say in the Nation of Islam, or even as you say the 5% nation, the nations of God on earth, that's a branch off of that in some way, shape, or form. The Moorish Science Temple is an expression. And even in that, it's still some Islamic and Christian principles in it. Say again?
Hebrew Israelites.
Yes. Hebrew Israelites is another expression of it. And some would even say it's actually going back. It's actually reaching back. Some would say reaching back through your DNA, reaching back through the spirit.
Right.
Bringing forth these things in modern times as what we consider the black expression of it.
I got you.
Right.
I know I said a lot.
Yeah. And let us set the record straight that we're not saying that every black person came over here on slave ships.
Absolutely not.
Right. So it was a lot more of us here than came on slave ships, because most of the ones that came on slave ships went to South America. But it was a lot more here than probably came on the slave ships, right? And some of them probably were indigenous,
right?
Which had indigenous or Indian or Native American traditions. And then you had some, what they would say, migrated over here from Africa that was here way longer than when they say that Christopher Columbus came over.
Right.
Way longer.
Right.
And they brought their religion or their spirituality system with them. Now, like you say, it might have gotten tainted and polluted by certain things because of slavery, working on people's plantations. You know, then they're trying to instill things inside you that you didn't really uphold to.
Right.
But like you say, it still was people in the community or in that set still had the remembrance of
Right.
their forefathers.
Right.
And but like you say, yes, today I think a lot of it is Christianity, but it's broken up a lot in other other ideas.
Right.
Right, right. So, with that being said, is, what African Americans consider as a religion or consider as religion, is it tied to the resolution of trauma?
Say it again. Or ask that again.
Is what the African American understand as religion, is it tied to the resolution of trauma? So something that you said a few minutes ago is okay. You said that I'm just using slavery as a one point because generally most people got some knowledge about that, right? And when that was happening, they had certain ideas, certain norms that influenced or primed how they related to the creator. And because of that, they sought religion, or they had an understanding of religion based on the traumatic experiences of that generation.
Okay.
So that's the basis of the question. So I'll repeat it again. Is what the African American understands as religion, is that understanding tied to resolving the trauma that has been experienced from generation to generation? Because remember, you talked about certain things being passed on
Yes.
from generation to generation. And like one interesting dynamic, just a little small, and you can fact check it if you want, but like the Generation Z, those people who are coming into Earth, they're not necessarily tied to religion.
Right.
They're finding, I'll say this, they're either more accepting to embrace their own journey, or they don't deal with it at all.
Okay.
So
I would say unless you give them a purpose to accept what you're trying to give them, because now, like you say, we have Hebrew Israelites, right? Which I understand myself to be. With the younger people, they accept that more because now it comes down to our identity thing, right? And I was looking at a video this week, and it was like, well, it's all about identity to them, right? And then they tried to say, well, it's not all about identity; it's about a relationship with the Creator,
Right.
right? But knowing your identity is a way to know the Creator, or the acceptance of the Creator, or to understand the Creator. It's knowing thyself. That's what we will always say. Know thyself. If you know yourself, you know the God or Creator or the existence. You know that. So I would say yes on both ends. I would say no and yes on both ends because of the trauma issue, right? Some look at it as being traumatic, especially when it's talking about Christianity, because you were given something that you may not been partaking in. But let me say this though. Remember I said that some of these people migrated over. A lot of them people came from Spain that was already Christians.
Right.
And they were, people of color. And I would say probably African American people or what have you. They migrated over here. So, but once it started get to a point of being diluted by another group of people saying this and saying that, then it can become traumatic. But some would say no because we've been doing this the whole time.
Right. To answer your question, I would say the same thing. Going back on the paradoxical is yes, it's kind of hard not to go through what the ancestors of the so-called African American that came over here through the transatlantic slave trade, to say that it wasn't traumatic, right?
Right.
And now you're being, if you want to say, forced to learn a perspective that some could say aspects of it is foreign, and you have to deal with that, and it's gonna morph as we move through the centuries. It's gonna morph.
What you did.
Right. So,
Let me say this, right? So, like, I asked that question because, I have opportunity to talk to a lot of different people. And a lot of people that I talk to, they don't know why they attach themselves to religion. They just say like, well, I did it because my mom and my dad did it. That's pretty much like the primary answer that I get. Like, that's what I saw everybody else do. Not necessarily, this was an individuation, that I took upon myself to, reintegrate with the Creator. You understand what I'm saying? I do it and I see things through how somebody else saw it and how they portrayed it to me.
I agree. I definitely agree. Because, like you say, when we're talking about their influence, you more likely you're gonna probably walk into your mother's or your father's or your grandfather's footsteps when it comes to spiritual things.
Right.
Now, sometimes you may not because you have choices, and once you get hold of some information that you may know to be true, then that's the area more likely you may pursue after.
I mean, I agree with you. Like, my family, like they like Baptists, right? And that's what I saw growing up. You know what I mean? So, but I don't walk it out the way that my father walks it out.
Right.
Like,
Right.
a lot of that changed for me, as I got older. And I want to say, like, I had my mind made up. I probably was like 19 or 20 that, like, I need to figure this out for myself. You know what I mean? But not necessarily on the premise that, I attached my consciousness to religion because of something that was traumatic. Because when I was growing up, I didn't really know a lot about, the diaspora of, the in-depth parts about like slavery and how it links back to the scriptures and, different things. I didn't know a lot of that. That wasn't a conversation at our dinner table at night.
Right.
Just a real quick side question. You think the word slavery is I don't want to say a stupid word, but a misnomer? Because slaves are Slavs, which is a group of people, and that term was thrown on them. Just for the sake of the podcast, I mean, we're using the term, I get it, but so I keep thinking like forced servitude, things of that nature. So you might hear me say that.
Yeah.
Because
you could say it's forced servitude.
Forced servitude.
I mean,
I want to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
What was your question again? You said,
do you think that it's an appropriate word, slavery? Because we keep using that term, you know what I'm saying? And if you look in the script in the Bible, in the Hebrew, like on the podcast, when I say things, I'm saying it in a way that slavery is a group of people. It comes from a word that comes from a group of people named Slavs. And when that started happening, when they were enslaved or enslaved, we start using a term called slavery. But in reality, we're not
Slaves.
We're not slaves.
Right.
Servants.
Say that again.
Servants.
Forced servitude.
Yeah.
Then you have indentured servitude,
Right.
which is you have a time that you work and then you get released. So
Which I mean,
it carries a different.
which biblically, like those principles are
It's-
much more different than the Western influence of the word slavery or slave.
Depends on how you interpret it. I've been looking at it lately, and well, I've been looking at it for a long time. It depends on how you interpret it. If yes, I'll say yes, and it's very, very fine in passing on a slave from generation to generation to generation. It's in the Bible,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you go back to putting that all on the ear, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, releasing a slave or a servant for the sake of knocking out his tooth
Right.
Facts.
is in there as well.
It's in there.
So we got to deal with equal weights and measures.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm about to say that too. Is the way you deal with your in the scriptures, how you deal with your servant.
Right.
And we know certain things that weren't handled during those times.
Right.
That didn't happen. But they would call themselves a Christian nation at that time. So,
Right.
and even that person that was putting the affliction on that person, they would call themselves a Christian at the time.
Right.
So that's interesting to me right there.
But going back to your initial question, yes, I do feel like the way the religions have shaped to this point is based on dealing with the trauma of the forced servitude or slavery.
Right.
And then you get this moment in your life, right, where, you're on that road to Damascus, if you will. And then you become enlightened.
Right.
Right.
You see a light,
You see a light.
and it could be blinding.
It can be.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I'm seeing now that a lot of people are, they might be putting the assemblies down. They might be not necessarily going to vacation Bible school
Right.
every summer. They may not be attending the mosque as regularly, but they're focusing inward, and they trying to connect inwardly to it that causes to exist, God, Yah, Allah, however you frame it.
Right.
Right. That's what they doing.
Right. And I would agree. And going back to what you mentioned about Generation Z, I think it's a time that a lot of people, if we believe in prophecy and so on and all on those things, prophecy, prophetic utterances, I think it's actually foretold that it will be a time, and because of the structured way of thinking, believe it this way or see it this way. I'm showing you how to see it. You have a way that you're looking that you're missing the unfoldment of what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You're completely missing it. These young generations, what they need, and I would say need, is someone that has a foundation to help guide them in their
journey. Yeah.
Not too abrasive where you're trying to put them in your box, but guiding them along saying, listen, a foundation helps you if you swing too far to the left or if you swing too far to the right. That's all I think a foundation really does. It gives you some type of structure, and then you build on it. You build on that structure.
It gives you a point of reason.
Right. And that being said, it's we're sitting here, we profess to be Hebrew.
Right.
Right. But somebody watching is like, these brothers don't talk like Hebrews. They may not look like Hebrews.
Chipotle.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Because we have taken our own personal expression and we've outsourced it back into our existence and our reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that's going to look foreign to somebody that's in their box.
Right.
And again, man, like that goes back to what, psychologists say, that's the priming effect, right? When you're conditioned to express things based on how you've seen them in times past.
Right.
So you're gonna respond. Let me say let's use religion as a certain stimuli on the brain,
Right.
right? For the most part, right? If what's been told and what's been taught to African Americans is if you don't do it within this box, then you're not doing it right. Meaning, you gotta be here, you gotta do this, you gotta say it this way, you gotta dress this way, right? That, and there's several other categories that kind of outline this idea. Go ahead.
Right now we're just talking about religion and spirituality.
Yes.
That gets
Right.
into politics.
Yes.
If you're not, was it Republican, Democrat?
So something,
If you're not this, then you're not black enough.
yeah,
If you don't listen to this
Right.
kind of music, you're not
not
black
black
enough.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you don't speak a certain type of way, you're not black enough. So it's like we pigeonhole each other
right,
into this false illusion of what African American, black, or whatever other constructs that we grasp onto, what
Yeah.
it looks like.
Right.
And I think that's it's very limiting on how
Right.
great a soul or a person could grow.
What I think a lot of people, or we have to realize, is we're here to walk our own walk.
No, we got to say the same thing.
No, brother.
We all got to say the same thing.
No.
but let me
Because if you say what I say, you can't get away with what I say sometimes.
Right.
Depends on where we at.
Right.
Right. Some things you just can't say I can say.
Right.
You just can't say things to my son that I
Right.
can say to my son.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So when we're looking at a person, we're trying to say, no, brother, it's this way.
Right.
This is how you walk.
Right.
No, I can't. No, you can't walk in. You might not be able to pray 3 times a day.
Right.
You might can't meditate 3 times a day.
Right.
You might don't turn in circles 3 times a day, 33 times. We'll get into that later on another show. You may not do these things. You might not read 4 or 5 books within a month.
Right.
You might not be able to do that.
Right.
So it's crazy for me to tell you that, yo, this is the way.
Right.
Because you may not be built for that.
I feel like if anybody tells you they got it, they know the way, this is the only way, you should run like HE double hockey sticks from that person in the opposite direction.
I agree, brother.
Now, if they
I
say,
definitely agree.
listen, I got something to show you, I'm not telling you to do it the way I do it. I'm just going to show you how I do it. And then you take from there how you want to, you take from it whatever you get from it. Now we can talk. Now we can build.
right. And one thing that Piglon was saying earlier is that what has happened is as religion as a mechanism of influence, when you don't do it the way that people think you should do it, we start going in on each other.
Because I'm a witness. I've done that.
Right. And
I think we all.
I think we all.
I think we all been there, but
But we learn.
I did. I learned a lot from that. You know what I'm saying? And it was, it proved to me that that's not the approach that's relevant for me.
Right.
Right. I can't going in on somebody, and and at the same time saying that I'm a beacon of light for the Creator. That
Right.
that didn't work out too well.
Right. And let me add this too, because I think it need to be said. I think we missed that point a couple of weeks ago when we was talking about it. When someone else is in a different spiritual idea or ideology from you, you need to let them do that instead of downing them, degrading them, telling them they going to hell and all of this stuff. No,
I mean,
that's their path.
But what if it's your child and
No.
they're in your house and you gotta
No, that
they-
ain't
they
the
need-
way, brother.
they need to do it the way that you do it.
Right. The way it's called love. That's all it is. The Creator love you, and you should love your. Because you get away with a whole bunch of stuff with the Creator. but you don't have passion enough to allow your child to move in a certain way. And like I say, I've been guilty of that.
Right.
But I had to learn. I had to, like you said a week ago, I think we was talking about love. We had to find out what love is and what
Right.
love really is. And a lot of people, when you think what we understand what love is, you would stare us in the face and say, "No, brother, you wrong."
I think. Finish your thought.
Go ahead.
I think that's the disconnect between a lot of our generations and Generation Z, is because we were taught like, okay, as long as you live in my home and my house, you're gonna abide by my rules, and a lot of times that means you're gonna be as I be.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And not all cases, because it's a paradoxical thing, because it does form some type of structure.
Right.
But at the same time, you have those that go away from it. That feels like they ran from that type of thinking.
Right.
Well,
Right.
my parent was like this, so I'm gonna be like this.
Right.
And we kind of see the results of that now. However, going back to what I said initially, it's like we should take the foundation and the structure, and if you see your child leaning in different directions, you show them, not force them, but you show them and guide them, and you're there. You try to be there every step of the way on their journey, because you may learn something too.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You got something?
You lead them without controlling them.
Right.
Hey, listen.
It's like having the shepherd staff. I was just dealing with that this morning with
Okay.
Tia. With the staff, because a lot of times we think the rod things we supposed to be beating our children.
Right.
No, it's to guide them to a certain point in life. Now you can't control. They might get away from your little rod, and you got sometimes you just gotta pick your rod up, say, "Oh well," and let it ride. Now I want people to get things twisted, because within the household there are rules.
Right.
Now that don't mean I have to make you do a religion or what I do when I'm talking about spirituality things. No, when I say you need to go wash the dishes, yeah, you need to go wash the dishes. That's the rule of the house. You got to go wash the dishes. You got to go take the trash out. Now I don't expect anybody to do anything in my house. Because if you don't do it, guess who's going to do it? I'm going to do it. But then when you come to me and you want something done, I'm going to look at you.
You're going to carry the same energy.
I'm going to look at you, be like, okay.
But you know what? Even that in itself it's priming the brain. You know what I'm saying? Like, even that is still, I feel like that's still leading and guiding the soul. Right? Like, they still, you may not call it out. Hey, look, you gotta do unto others as you want them to do to you.
Right.
You don't gotta spell that out, right? But they gonna learn.
Right.
I tell my children, man, I like, listen, I'm not telling you to be a Hebrew. That's what I do.
Right.
That's where I'm at.
Right.
But what I do encourage you to do is find a path of discipline that aligns with how your soul is progressing.
That's a good word right there, though.
You know what I'm saying? This is what I found that works for me. This is what has helped me out in my journey. You can do it with me if you want to. It's all good. But I'm learning more and more better ways to preserve relationships with that generation.
Okay. Now, I guess, how does this relate to religion and spirituality in the 7 spheres of influence?
Well, again, right? So, like, I'm a back up to last week. Last week we had the family dynamic.
Right.
This week we talking about religion, which is a subcomponent of the family dynamic.
Right.
Right. Overarching that, that main hub of decision making. So it feeds in multiple ways. Right. Because, if I go back and we, okay, well, what's a black religion or an African American religion? We talked about that.
Okay.
Right. And that is what it is. you know, is what we understand as religion tied to resolving trauma? And we say that it is.
Yes.
And we know that generationally we carry trauma.
Yes.
Right.
And we carry trauma through our actions, and we demonstrate that trauma through our actions. And sometimes we might project that onto the next generation that
Right.
affects their decision making.
Right.
You might carry a certain type of trauma experience or a certain traumatic regimen and act that out on your children through religion. And, you might send them off on a whole entire different path.
Right.
Right.
So these are the different ways that I think that it applies, because we coin it as, well, it's understood as a sphere of influence, right? But really breaking down the dynamic, right, is important. Or I think that it's important, especially in this particular time when, I mean, you can just look at, our generation, the generations behind us, they're looking. They're asking for clairvoyance in this area.
Okay.
So again, if the overarching theme is making a decision, right, and we have these different dynamics that influence that decision, boom, this is where we're at. So what are we doing about it?
Each one teach one.
Each
Right,
one teach
right.
one.
It's like with my son, he's kind of more on the logic
Okay.
sphere, but in his actions and a lot of things he does, he remembers a lot of the teachings that I gave him when he was younger. And of course, if you all know that, his mother, they moved away. So I had few and far times in between to spend the actual good quality, what I consider a good amount of time.
Yeah.
But in our conversations, now he's 18 years old, the feedback and the interaction that I get is based on the foundation. And I allow him, meaning when he's talking, I listen and I make suggestions. And I told him, like, listen, I put in as much as I could in the time that I had with you. So now it's on you to take that, what you agree with, what you disagree with, because that's what we do. That's what we as human beings do. And as you move out into the world and have these experiences, you really create a system that's you. You see what I'm saying? So going back to the family structure and 2023, I think it's very important that, I don't want to say get away from, but that people look at themselves and how they deal with those in their family, and how are they leading their family with a iron rod, or are they actually having interactions to where they're understanding and seeing the heart of what each person is saying and how they want to move forth in their spiritual, move forward spiritually. And all you do is just guide. Just be there to be a guidance and be that.
Right.
Sometimes you don't always have to read something to make a point.
And see that was what you just said was going to segue into my next question, right? How has leadership, or what we, contend as leadership, how has that influenced our identity within religion? And I think we probably have already talked about some of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But you said just be a guide.
Right.
You don't always got to say, hey, look, get me that out of Shemot or Exodus chapter 3.
Right.
Right. Because the answer is right here.
Right.
Right. But, you're talking about a thinking system within a being that may not relate to that. Go ahead.
So, something that Seth and I was talking about is like, you could today you tell a child something, and as you're talking, they're pulling out their phone, fact checking you.
Oh, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But when you're talking, having a organic conversation, it's a whole different experience. Especially when you listen, you're listening with your heart and everything. It's a different experience than, hold on, son, let me go get this book and read it to you. It's like, these children are different. they're like, dang, Dad, everything he say come out of that book. A man wrote that book. So my dad, whether the believer is thinking divine man inspired by God wrote the book, but for somebody that doesn't compute logic that way or compute that way, they're like, dang, this person don't even got does he have a brain of his own, an intellect of his own, a reasoning of his own? Or does he get all of the information in a pre-uploaded system? Because it is a system. So it's just interesting to look at things from that perspective. Not to say reading from the book is wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying think about the person that's kind of detached from that perspective and are looking at things that are more, Dad, talk to me.
Right.
Mom, talk to me.
You got to give them something that's tangible to them right then and there.
Right.
Whatever works for them at that moment.
Right.
Not the book that was written 3,000, 4,000 years ago.
I told my the idea that I have with this was to start teaching my children to learn how they apprehend their soul's movement and instruction. Apprehend and comprehend their soul.
Okay. Simplify that for me. Apprehend, to capture. Okay, their soul's movement and the soul structure, the makeup of it.
It's instruction.
Instruction.
Right. Because I think that, so if we go off this statement that a lot of people say is as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Shall be.
So shall he be. Right. And there's a lot to unpack in just that statement alone. Right? Because a lot of people are detached from what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're doing when thoughts are happening throughout the process of the day.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what I'm venturing to say to, that generation that so happens to be in my household is you do yourself a lot of benefit by capturing your soul's instructions, which means that, you got to be quiet long enough to get that understanding. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, it's up to you. You know what I'm saying? Like you have the opportunity to take your journey a skillful way, where it's, less strenuous, or you can do it the other way, where it becomes more strenuous. But all in all, man, like these are some tools that you can use to do that. Just calm down, throttle back just a little bit, right? And just listen. Perceive what's going on. And something I talked to Zokane about, which I shared it with both you brothers, right? Where something simple as when you're breathing, breathe in the perception, exhale out the truth,
right?
Of what that is. And you know what? I'm still chewing on that because nope, I wasn't getting nothing like that when I was
right.
But
it's out here. We're just not comprehending it as that.
It's a frequency, okay?
Exactly. So once you come into a frequency like that, it may take you 20 years to get that.
You feel me? So, think about being on that other frequency where you tuned in. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, when you talk about the progression of the soul, and I would venture to say that most people, they come to a point where they say, you know what? I've had my run with what's material. And some people don't. They caught up in that life, and that feels good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But generally, I think that all mankind wants to understand fully the components of their soul. And they're going to do that. They're going to seek it out the way that they seek it out.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
It always comes back to how does this all affects that sphere of influence when it comes like, is it an important sphere? Is it important to be a sphere of influence? Like, is it important as, just being so-called black, African American, or just for everyone in general?
I think that it's important for everybody in general. I think that the labeling has caused a lot of the disconnect.
That's why I
Because
said the
Right.
church versus the black church and this church and that church. It's just the church. It's
Right.
just expressed
Right.
differently through different avenues.
and that's what I'm saying.
Facts.
Right.
Full
You know,
principle.
you can't say that it's not supposed to be here because it's here.
It's here, right?
You know what I'm saying? And you know, as you strive in reconciling that idea, right? The creator, you know, we can say that the creator allows these things for the benefit and progression of your soul.
Right.
You know, when you've spent a good majority of your life only seeing things from the negative aspect, you tend to get tired of it. You know what I'm saying?
Because it doesn't work with your spirit.
It doesn't, right? Like, so it's like, okay, well, you're not the real this, that, and the third. I'm the real this, that, and the third, and
It's dealing. That's strictly polarity thinking.
that's it.
It's going back to the garden, and we talk about now man has known good and evil, or Tob and Ra.
Right.
It's a perspective. It's a very, this on this side is one thing, and this on that side is one thing. I have to choose one of these things,
Right.
and
When it's all come down and say it's the same thing.
it's the same thing. It's a
just
triangle.
different.
It's a
Just
triangle.
different degrees.
The creator's here
Right.
at the top of the triangle.
Right.
What you consider Tob is on one side, and what you consider Ra is on the other side.
Right.
So if he's here and you're trying to meet the creator, what side?
Right.
It rains on the good as well as the wicked.
Exactly.
So what are we aiming for?
Right.
Well, I'm gonna answer that question.
Go ahead.
Right. Maybe we're not aiming, and I hope that when you're saying aiming, like what are we striving for?
Right.
You know,
Okay.
maybe we're
Yes.
not aiming. Maybe we're trying to control.
Mm.
You know, you want to control not only your outcome, but you may actually feel like, listen, I gotta get them to see it like how I see it, because if
Right.
it might be too late.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if they don't see it the way that I see it, then it's too late. You know, it's too late for them. You know, they're gonna, you make up all these things.
Why it's too late?
Why it's too late,
Right.
right? Not probably considering that, well, maybe, what's going on in their life is relevant for their learning.
Right.
You know, how many years did the children of Israel circle around in the wilderness?
Right.
It just as an example.
Right.
40 years.
According to the text.
According to the text, it said that they went around and did the same thing for 40 years. Some people don't even go past 40.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, to answer, going back to your question, how does this all tie in? Right? It ties in because through this influence, you know what I'm saying, more and more people are uninfluenced. More and more people are asking why. More and more people are, there's a lot that's just happening, with this particular dynamic. And of course, you can say it starts in the family or with the family,
Right.
right? And then, as we kind of get through the rest of these, we're gonna see like it's all one thing,
Right.
different spectrums on one line.
Right.
See, it's just even funny when you talked about the wilderness period,
Mhm.
the 40 years. For me, it's like I heard something different.
Go ahead.
I hear, you were given something. It was yours. I'm taking all these words I read in the book and I'm conceptualizing them in my being, in my mind space. And I see like, okay, the creator, whatever that is, he, she,
Probably
it.
perhaps
that
things that
exists.
you haven't dealt with within
Within
yourself first,
Right.
right? So you might have a not so good attitude, right? And in order for you to reconcile that difference, you got to deal with somebody who don't have a not so good, oh, excuse me, who has a not so good attitude.
Right. So one could say the wilderness represents a place of experiences
Yes.
with yourself.
Yes.
It's desolate. It's nothing out there. But things happen that gives you mirrors to reflect yourself. Like if I get mad at you, something you say or do, and I'm upset about it, like why is he not? It's not you. It's me. You just gave me the sounding board, so to speak, the mirror to look at this thing that I don't like and wonder and go within and figure out why is this affecting me this way?
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Just going like you said about the whole experience thing. Like this person has a certain way they see things, a certain way they believe it, and I got to get you to believe it my way. You should walk away and say, "Well, why do you have to get them to believe it that way?
Well, because I got a duty.
Why?
Right.
Like, I mean, what?
I'm telling you.
Okay, you have a duty.
Yeah.
So you've, based on your reasoning of how you perceive whatever your religiosity, beliefs, holy texty, you have come up with the conclusion that you have been chosen. So what you've done is you've given yourself a purpose.
Yeah.
You've given yourself a purpose to go and bother other people.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. It's an interesting state of being.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which, as you unpack that, what you'll come to find out is that manner of consciousness is it's an attempt to resolve doubt
And trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when you know, right, when you're sure, there's no need to convince. I think that there should come a point where you can start discerning the symbology of what you perceive.
The thought that comes to me is like, you made a statement before, like I'm the real and that's a fake. I don't think it's about being a real and a fake.
Right.
I think ultimately, and I'm talking about ourselves, Hebrews, and we've seen things in the media with Kyrie Irving, Kanye West, so on and so forth, different people talking about fake this and fake that. I believe when you say somebody's a fake anything, by the definition, one could say it is anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? But if you recognize that you are that which you say you are, then you do that which you say you are and what they do.
Right.
And even according to the scriptures, if somebody is propounding to be X, Y, and Z, you accept them as such.
Let them be.
They are who they say they are.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? If this dude says I'm Istanbuli and we follow Istanbuli religion, blah 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 blah, who am I? And if I believe I'm the same thing, but it goes back to expression. If I'm expressing it as this, who am I to tell them not to express it as that?
Right.
Hold on. And if it's a creator thing, we got parables, wheats and tares. If that is the truth and you believe it, allow the creator to be the separator of the wheat and tares. You just draw it to your own.
But what it is, I need to be the one that separate the wheat and the tares.
Well, you out of place and you out of order.
Well, the thing is, it's on both ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
The thing is,
Fourth principle.
They don't recognize us as being Hebrews or Israelites.
Right.
And a lot of us don't recognize them as being Hebrews or Israelite, And mainly because they call themselves Jews. They don't really call themselves Israelites.
Right.
But, that's a different thing. They still hold fast to Abrahamic covenants.
Right.
Or the law.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and it's particularly states in your book that anybody that holds forth this law, you're supposed to bring them in and treat them as your brother.
As an Israelite.
As an Israelite.
As far as I'm concerned, what anybody's doing outside of me when it comes to my my beliefs in the Creator and how I believe in Torah, it's none of my business.
You know what?
And if they're following the covenant the way they express it, That's my brother.
All good.
And if a brother is on the street corner and he's professing the same beliefs and he's expressing it with differences or whatever the case may be, guess what? That's my brother.
Facts.
So again, when you're sitting on one side, on the other side, you're in a consciousness that's dealing with polarity, which is what the fourth principle is all about. You're not wrong, but you're not right either. You just are where you are. And it's in order for us to be an influence or utilizing that influence, which we say is religion, it's like we need to start understanding our sameness versus our differences. And that's not only through African American, so-called black, whatever the case may be, that's through all people. It's understanding that, listen, if this group is purporting the same spiritual system or religious belief as you, get to understand their perspective and say, okay, that's a little bit different, but we do come together on this foundation.
Right.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because a person that's living in the desert, a person that's living in the jungle, and a person that lives in the mountain, they may worship or call on the same name of the same deity, but how it's expressed in the mountain is going to be different than how it's expressed in the desert. Right. If you had to be a person of warfare or culture of warfare for so many thousands of years, your expression might be warlike. And if you've been in a peaceful condition for several thousands of years, your expression may be just peace. And when the peace and the war meet each other, it's like, yo, we can't be from the same place. We can't be expressing the same thing, but you're not wrong, but you're not right. It's just a different aspect of the one.
Right.
And I would say embrace to understand.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
Right.
Yeah.
It's it's just like what we do on this, us brothers. I'm pretty sure I can speak for you brothers, because we accept all.
Okay.
We accept people of Buddhism, Islam. We met some brothers that's some Israelites last week that we built with, had a good conversation with.
Good conversation.
They are brothers.
Okay.
And a lot of people would say, "Oh, y'all met them guys?"
Right.
And may think it went a different way, but it didn't. It was a beautiful conversation that we had. We got some understanding of how they move and where they move at and how they move.
Right.
Allow them to move their way.
Right.
But I do want to touch on what is the healing process of trauma that has laid forth within religious ideas, spiritual or spirituality or Muslims or whatever, and these traumas continue to pop up. What is the solution for these traumas?
Go ahead.
The first thing that popped up in my mind, and it's still unfolding, is allowance. Because a lot of, and I'll just deal with this one part and I'll let you take it. The one thing is identity. It's like because of trauma, because of situations, people lost indigenous identity, right? And then through religious or Christian religion, Islam, and certain things of that nature, people have utilized that to have some form of identity, whether it's from a literal perspective or from a spiritual perspective. So who am I to tell somebody like that's coming with a Kemet philosophy that they're not from Egypt?
Right.
Who am I to say that they're like, listen, based on this, and this, I'm Egyptian. All right, brother, amen. Or a brother that's a Hebrew or identifies as a Hebrew. Our brother, based on the curses, I would say the blessings and the curses, I'm a Hebrew.
Exactly.
Well, amen to that, and so on and so forth. So the reconciliation is allowing someone to express themselves through whatever they choose to identify themselves as, and not fight against it.
Right.
Because if we believe in that creator, that one source, that one power, that's the one that's going to guide them and lead them as they navigate through life.
Right.
Ultimately, anyway. Malak, you had a thought?
Yeah. I think that in line with on the same sheet of music as Zach, I think that one thing that we could do is we should strive to to align to your conscious vibration.
Okay.
I think that we spend way too much time outside of ourselves.
Right.
I'll let you finish. Jared had a thought. I'll let you go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. She can. What's her
I don't know
thought?
how long ago I don't know how long ago she sent this. Let me grab her so I can speak into the mic. Jared said, when I was in the state of mind, and I felt I had to convince everyone else that I had the way. It was solely out of fear, trying to lessen the doubt that I had about what I was believing.
Right.
Essentially, if I can convince them, then I must be right.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Right.
Good point, Jerry. Good point.
Right, and just to home in on it, that's why we try to convince. You try to convince because you don't believe. You having trouble reconciling that as a truth for yourself.
So you think it's kind of like, well, the more people I have behind me or the more people I have standing next to me, it must be true. It's like it's confirming your belief.
Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where if you attune to yourself, right? If you tend to your conscious ability, if you tend to your spiritual progression, as you say, know thyself, you will come to know.
Right.
Why? Because experience will lend to you the appropriate measure that you need to build upon your foundation.
Say it again and start with experience and say it to the people.
What I said is that your experience will lend to you the appropriate amounts needed to build upon your foundation. So, and this is just, as you say, this is just minding your own business.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that's one vehicle. Another vehicle is seek and pray for knowledge. Right?
Mm-hmm.
However you pray, whatever that looks like for you, just
Right.
continue to do it. And again, the Creator, through your experience, will again lend unto you.
Right.
Right? It will be given to you. Ask, and it shall be given.
Right.
Seek, and you shall find.
Yeah.
So again, this is all about doing your personal inner work. So again, choose that path of discipline.
Right.
Right? Because who am I to say that the Buddhist, the Muslim, or the Hebrew, right, that they're not doing everything that they can to reconcile themselves to the Creator?
Right.
That hasn't been given to me.
You know what's interesting about what you just said? Minus the Buddhists, because I don't know. When you go back to I want to say before medieval, like when the Moors ruled Spain, so 700 AD to the 1400s, 1492.
Mm-hmm.
Christians, Jews, Muslims all lived together and all built up society in Europe during that time. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. I feel like when someone truly strives to attain understanding of the Creator within, it's hard not to see the Creator in everybody else,
Right.
which causes unity.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Because again, when you're dealing with the outer man or the outer appearance of what this person's doing, what that person's not doing, and so on and so forth, it distracts you from the truth,
Right.
which is within. And once you latch onto the truth within, it outsources out.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Creator's here, oh man, he's there too. And he's there too. And he's there too.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it in all people. And mind you, you have a different level of recognition of where a person is consciously, just based on that understanding alone, understanding yourself. When you get in let's say a confrontation with somebody, you have more of an understanding like, oh, this brother, he's asleep to what's going on right now. And I'm using that term, it's just a word. He's not aware consciously of what's really going on in this interaction, if it could be considered a negative interaction. So you have more compassion in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
see what I'm saying? In those cases, that's when you're you're right, but you allow them to be whatever. You allow them to like, you know what, brother, you know what, you're right. Even though you may be right by the intellectual means.
Right.
You digress.
And and like you were saying, a lot of that comes down to trauma, right? That they have or anybody else have if they have these issues. And when they're talking about, I think you was talking about trauma in the cells. We would call it cell, what we would say cell trauma in breath work. When we do talk about breath work journeys and stuff, we always talk about the cell memory, because within that memory it has your lineage.
Right.
Whatever your grandfather went through, believe it's in your cell and it hasn't been released. So now we're in a position of, okay, now we have to learn how to release these energies up out of our cells, because it can't happen. You can get them up out of your cell memory. And now once you start to deal with the trauma, now you stop trying to look for controlling of a person. But that's what caused a lot of these what you would call wars.
Right.
Because of trauma.
And control.
Control.
The trauma leads to the control.
Control.
Because you've been in a situation or circumstance that you don't deem good. So now you're like, I'm going to control my situation or circumstances, which is an illusion. But you try to impress that outward into your environment.
Right.
Which gets into like concepts of epigenetics.
Yeah.
It's some people say it's your blood. You inherited the disease, and they're finding out that I could take these genes, but your thoughts and your environment affects the genes
exactly
to bring forth X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
And you know what? That's one thing that I found that's been pretty consistent with a lot of medical science, standing rule of law. Just on another level, is that thoughts do not leave; they stay.
Yeah.
Right? Or that energy or that frequency, it stays. It's permeated. You know what I'm saying? Meaning, there's always an opportunity to either stay with that state or rise above it.
Or transmute it, transform it into something else.
Something else.
It's kind of like it's the concept of like, your child having idle time and taking that same energy, which we should be doing with the youth, these gangs and so on and so forth. These are young warriors. What if you take that energy and make them a warrior for the Creator?
Right.
Whatever that looks like. You see what I'm saying? So it's just taking that same energy. They're tearing up the house. Man, I'm gonna put this child in football or basketball or something. It's the same concept and thought.
Exactly.
It's redirecting the energy,
right?
Transmuting it, changing it from one state, a lower state, to a higher state.
Right. Everything is energy. Everything is spirit.
Everything is spirit.
So it can move. It can teach us in any way. Now, I'm gonna say this because when I say everything is spirit, everything is spirit. These books that we have, any book, I don't care what book it is, you can find something to lead you back to the Creator in it if you're looking for it in that framework.
Oh yeah.
You can look at the book Alice in Wonderland and find the way back to self or spirit. It's all in here. Any book. I don't care what book it is. But some people don't believe that everything is spirit, because you have this physical manifestation of things.
Well, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
I just had a question though. Do you think there's a duality in that? Meaning, I agree, everything is spirit, and you have a higher spirit and you have a lower spirit, and sometimes our spirit will fall into the lower spirit.
Right.
And it's kind of like wherever your spirit's at. Same thing with a book, same thing with a movie, same thing with, you could start projecting situations or circumstances based on where you're at consciously. Just like when in the Hebrew circles, they'll watch a movie. Oh, they talking about Israel right there.
Israel.
Black Panther.
Right.
Planet of the Apes.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
And you can see it because consciously that's where you're at. So you're not necessarily wrong. You just are where your consciousness lies.
Right. It's on the same line. but different degrees.
Different degrees.
That's
Same
fourth
line,
principle.
different degrees.
And you know,
Fourth principle.
on that, right? Wait till you start, you know, and this is another topic, but wait till, you know, we get an opportunity to discuss the subtle bodies.
The energy bodies.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because again, so long as you are confined to the sensory complex, right? Those things with your spirit will remain dormant in your consciousness until until you're ready or you're willing.
One could say, you know, this is for the Hebrews that might be listening. It will remain in your Esau,
Facts.
in your
your
lower chakra,
Your
the
lower.
red,
or your red chakra.
You're red.
your red chakra.
You're red. Yeah.
Right.
So you
Go ahead.
would you say some brothers are out there in the spirit of Esau,
Could be.
Could be.
thinking that
now-
they're Israel?
I mean,
Thinking that they're Israel.
I tell you, man, like I had a season in there.
Can't.
Right.
Can't.
Oh yeah, I think we all had.
Yeah,
that
we all
season.
had a season in
I
it.
think we all
I,
had that season.
I had a season in there.
Yeah.
You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean? But again, man, like
You got to rise. You got to rise to become Jacob.
you gotta yeah.
Okay. Actually, you got to rise to become Yisrael,
Yisrael. Then you have to rise to become the Christ or the Mashiach.
Mashiach.
Bro, stop playing right there. I'm telling y'all, man.
Oh, we might have
Telling
get into.
you, bro.
We getting into the seven candlesticks,
Right.
the seven lamps,
the seven I ams.
the seven came.
Right.
The seven I ams. Right.
Right.
So, you know, tying this all back to religion as a sphere of influence, right? I think that we should continue to strive to bring some balance to like what that is, right? And I think, you know, at some point I would encourage everybody to, like, you know, as you're going through that journey, ask yourself, you know, like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing?
And why?
And why am I doing it?
Right.
Right? I don't think that those are, you know, those are good questions to ask.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, you know, document, you know, your responses to that. You know, how many times have you been in a situation, somebody say something, and, you know, you get that, what? You know, or you know, or it resonates with you, like, you know, what is that? Which, I mean, we know what that is,
Right.
right? But, you know, it's just simply taking the time to attune to your frequency and learning thyself, learning about you, learning about the creator within you.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And when we're talking about healing, right? There's a lot of modalities in healing. What
Many.
you can do to remove a lot of these traumatic issues, and you know, some of these issues, you know, you don't even know where they come from.
Right.
You know, so it's some healing that and I'm gonna say, as the human race, need to do. Not just one individual group or what have you. We all need to start finding ways to get rid of the karmatic issues that we have stored within our cellular memory.
The collective. That's called the human collective or the earth collective consciousness.
Right.
See, people are looking at everything as one. You got the individual, then you got your family, your nation, and so on and so forth. But we're all a collective.
We all a collective.
We're all a collective.
We
and
all of the earth.
Cain.
you know, it takes some really, it takes a great measure of humility to come to that understanding.
Right.
To say that, you know, we're all the collective consciousness, because it's very pervasive to say no, it's them.
Right.
That's so easy.
It's not.
But a lot of times, you know, again, I always like to use the analogy with children. Well, I wouldn't have hit him if he didn't do this first. And if when you look at adults, grown people, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like this because he treated me wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
So you gonna treat him wrong because he treats you wrong. Well, it's in the scripture: an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. that's a perspective. I was going to say something else, but that's an interesting perspective to have when it comes to love.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah, man.
we got a lot of healing to do as a collective.
As a collective.
Ain't just about Hebrew Israelites,
Right.
Black, African American, white, Jewish, Indian. It's all of us as a collective. We're all one.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely.
Find somewhere to heal. You know, if you go to church, you getting up screaming and hollering, running around the church, whatever heals you, do that.
Whatever gives you a release.
Do that. I mean, do that. You know, if it's meditation, do that.
Right.
If it's moving your beads around, do that.
That.
You know, if it's doing yoga, do that, because you have to clear these negative. Let me not say negative. Let me say the trauma that you have built upon your forefathers' trauma. You have to get it out, because your trauma on top of their trauma only going to lead to trauma, more trauma. So you have to release a lot of it. And like I say, however you do it, and however you do it, that's how you just try to get to a place of getting rid of that traumatic.
And please, if you meet me anywhere, don't give me the reason why you don't do something is based on because somebody else did it and somebody came and stopped them from doing it. I'm not in that state of awareness or that state of consciousness or that mentality that if I try to do something and somebody come along and may stop me, that it means I shouldn't keep trying.
Right.
No, I don't.
I shouldn't keep trying to build or do something for my family or whatever the case may be.
No, I don't think like that. I don't ascribe to that.
Right.
As they say, I rebuke that in the blood of Jesus.
Hey, you know.
Shandada.
Whoa.
All of that. Yes, indeed. Man.
Anybody got any other thoughts for now?
Again, just want to thank you brothers for your dedication to the fourth principle.
Yeah.
And just staying true to a positive work. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in and sharing your thoughts with us.
Right.
Don't forget to check us out on YouTube.
Right.
And you know, if you're in the Hampton Roads area, you know, and you like to be a guest on the fourth principle, reach out to us on Facebook or at fourthprinciple7@gmail.com.
Right.
Okay.
Hit us up.
And you can always hit us. I mean, not hit us, but also listen also on Spotify also. So if you have Spotify, just look up the fourth principle. And soon we'll start putting episodes up there also. So that's coming soon. Instagram. We're on Instagram as the fourth principle. And like I say, the YouTube. So I just want to thank everybody, man, for liking the videos, looking at them, watching them, responding to them, and a lot of the shorts that we putting out, they really big hits right now. So, but we just want to thank y'all. Appreciate you.
Yeah, much
Love
thanks. You. Much thanks. In Hebrew, Toda Rabbah.
Okay.
Like I say, you could have been anywhere, doing anything, but you're here with us. So I want to say thank you. Peace, much love, and namaste.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.